Hi, Sachin.
Hey, Dinker.
So, Sachin, usually people want to talk about value,
Yeah,
but today you want to talk about cost, right?
yes.
And this is a very interesting topic. I had not thought about it this way. So, go ahead and introduce the topic. What do you want to talk about today?
Yes. So, Dinker, to be very honest, the whole topic came from personal experience rather than thinking about a scenario which we should discuss as an interesting topic. So, whenever I have spoke to either startups or even lived through one of the startups, I realized that people have people say that, and I think we spoke in the first episode itself, that I have a pet peeve when people say I am agile. They use many times agile as a term to um, keep things very open and don't want to actually lock things down. And that's
No,
okay.
non-committal behavior. Thy name is Agile.
Exactly. Excuse me. And in that scenario, I think it is sometimes okay, but most often it actually hurts to the company, the product, and business.
And
But
the concept of Agile itself also. It
yes,
hurts
because
that
it creates
concept.
a bad reputation. You are telling that I do certain process, but you are actually not following that process. Uh, and what I have realized that product management is something which is actually a casualty of such kind of scenarios. Because if you think about product management, the first principle of being product management, bringing product management on board is have certain rules and processes to decide what comes into the product and what goes out of the product. But often founders want to retain that exclusive veto rights to decide what goes in and what goes out. Now, if a person such as yours, who is a product manager, is also co-founder, then the things are different. But what if, let's say, you have two co-founders who are technical or purely business co-founders, and they don't have product managers background? Now you are actually in tough spot, and that is something which is so we have our first guest. So what I have realized is that uh, product management is sort of not in the best interest of a lot of people because that actually puts rules on them. And product management is also not something which comes for free of charge. There is people cost involved in it. There is also process and tools cost involved in it. And what I mean by tool is that if you are running A/B experimentation, if you are actually creating that feedback loop, you need to also play those development stories for getting that infrastructure in. And when you have all these things, plus you have to be disciplined enough to act upon the feedback which you are receiving.
Exactly.
And here, uh, the clear argument to weed out product management is not value, but it is cost. Is this is something which is not a priority for us right now. Let me get this into customer hand first. But to me, it is extremely anti-pattern because now you are so preciously rushing to get something into customers' hands, but you have no interest in measuring whether customer is happy with it or not.
Right.
Because many times people also want to uh, sort of feed to their confirmation bias
Mm.
that
So essentially, what you're saying is that the function of product management today is a direct correlation to the stage of the product, the size of the organization. So the belief is that product management comes at a cost until you have reached a stage where you can absorb that cost. You would not want to engage a product manager, and you have like a sort of a product manager that is the founder who believes that we'll do this, we'll take this route, is product management and is a poor substitute for it.
correct. And assuming, and I have met few people who didn't know how to do product management or bring product management elements into place uh, uh, while maintaining the cost. They value it, they want to do it. So I didn't want to talk about that negative aspect apart from stating that this is a common behavior, but I would like to also bust this myth sort of that, hey, you can achieve this, but you don't need to actually break the bank for it. Just like this is very similar argument which I have experienced in my life about test driven development or pair programming. They think adding two people is actually double the cost when it is actually not. And similarly, I would like to say adding ProMa elements to your startup or product is not increasing the cost. Actually, it can save massive cost. But even if, let's say, that doesn't happen, I wanted your opinion. Is this even hypothesis correct? That doing product management, is it possible for young budding startups and products, or even enterprises who are not, let's say I'm a enterprise architect and I want to bring in product management elements into our company, which is very new to this. um, do I need to actually get massive budget approvals, or I can actually get started onto some sort of budget? So on one hand, large companies who might be reluctant to spend, and on one end, companies which want to do but they don't have a lot of money. Are there any uh, like salvation opportunities for them to get started with it, show some benefit, and then increase their investment?
So one thing, Sachin, I feel that this reluctance is a function of stage of product rather the size of the organization. Few days back, I was talking to one person, a product manager from a very large bank, right? And now this product manager is very passionate about metrics, measuring things. And I was talking, sounds fair. What about, that's what you think, that's what you believe, but are you able to do it at your job? Not really, because what I'm, the product that I'm part of now, we had a mandate to push things out immediately, right?
Hmm.
And my boss did not approve the inbuilt things I could put in to measure things, to figure out things, and uh, and I have to fall back on these quote unquote vanity metrics, because in absence of all of these things I have to do all of, right? So I said, hey, you're the product manager, why didn't you fight for it? I said, it doesn't work like that, right? Because everywhere says, okay, let's get it out first, let's see if there is any user, there is any response, and then we will bake it, right? So I think the fallacy there is that that first is the first thing is, will I get accepted or rejected? It's a very basic human fear. Will I get accepted, or will someone say no to me? Let me first confirm that. After that, I'll say that, okay, if someone says yes, what kind of things I need to do, right? And product management is seen as that kind of luxury to have, that once, and this is so different from the theory of product management, where product management is the one that helps you find product market fit. So from day zero, your product should be able to give you those future sensing metrics, all those metrics that can help you figure out that, is the market liking what I'm doing or not? Because for a startup, if no one is downloading the app, if no one is buying my product, that's a clear signal that a market doesn't exist. What they don't realize is that's a clear signal that you have not reached the market yet. You're too early, the right people don't
Hmm.
know about you, right? It takes time, right? It doesn't mean that market has rejected you and that is your first validation. Was I accepted or was I rejected, right? Now to come to your question, right? What kind of low cost version of product management is available to a startup or a large organization which does not want to burn a lot of budget, front load that cost, right? What are the lean things that they can do in product? Almost every the first thing, Sachin, that almost every good product today out there has a free version, right? They have a trial version. You can start using that, like right from Google Analytics to any kind of analytics. Everything has a free tier, right? And I see a lot of startups in India take advantage of these free tiers like crazy, right? They're using it for development tools. They're using it for productivity tools. They're using it for business. What I would start recommending to people is start using it for product management, right? That's the first thing to go out. Second is now product management in a
So Dinker, on that free tier, sorry to interrupt, but um, are these free tiers only available for startups, or even let's say I want to bring that flavor into enterprise, I can use that.
So the free tier is available for everyone, right? However, enterprise have certain risks in just adopting some piece of software, right? There are a lot of checks and balances. There are a lot of security checks that happen. So from that perspective, yes, they are little at a disadvantage. However, if you, it's my favorite thing, right? Every startup, every new product, they will have that pricing tiers, right? Free, you get this. There is gold, there is platinum, and then for enterprise, call us. Feel free to call them. Say that we can't just immediately take your free version, put in the credit card because as an enterprise, but take the free trial for 6 months. Right? There's no one stopping, right? So yes, those free trial tier versions are available in many ways to enterprises. No startup will say to a large bank or large IT organization coming and saying that I want to try your product for 3 months. I want to evaluate it. They say no, right? So yes, free tier is available. Now that we have this free tier, right? Now you have all these tiers. So what kind of product should you bring in, right? First of all, product management is not being a product manager is not being same as a product owner, right? Product management is a thought process, which is much more than just the development part of it. So if you're just having a product owner who is guiding the development team, doesn't mean that you are doing product management, right? That's a very small part of it. So first of all, define what are the things that I want to do from day zero, inbuilt into my product, inbuilt into my thought process, inbuilt into my analysis, right? The first thing is metrics, right? Start gathering as much as possible metrics in early days. I'm not recommending data gluttony. Like, don't just put all kind of, even your cap, someone is moving mouse over your web page and you're starting to record that, not that kind of thing, right? All your major events, someone is going to the buy page, they're clicking on a plan, they're filling up the information, but then they're clicking on cancel. Try to figure this information out just to understand how users are interacting, right? So one of the worry is that, if I have one user, then after 1 week, I get another user, my growth is 100%. Doesn't mean anything, right? So percentages are the biggest enemy of a early stage product. You go with the absolutes, you understand the absolutes, you understand where your people are dropping off. So the first focus is on the metric, and the aim of the metric is to understand how people are interacting with your product. Don't create patterns out of it yet. Don't expect that every 2 weeks I will have a growth of 100% because in 1 week I had a second user, right? So don't look for patterns in terms of growth and percentage kind of patterns, but just look how people are interacting with it, and start measuring those kind of things. That's part one. Part two is start building in some kind of experimenting, and this sometimes is very expensive, right? So people think experiment. Okay, let me see. Can you give me Bangalore, Marathalli and Velandur, people with 2 kids? Suddenly, you can go crazy with your experimenting, right? Keep things very basic. Figure out a very simple way in which you can divide your whole population of users into 2, 3 categories, right? Let the category be random. Let it be a random selection of all your user base. Try something with A, try something with B. Get the most minimal version of A and B testing out, right? No need to go over analytical. Just get the information, get the patterns, try the blue. Should I put a blue button? Should I put the red button? Something as basic as that. Do something very basic in your AB environment where you can divide the population of your into two. Future on, when you have become very sophisticated, you can do all kind of demographic data and demographic filtration and all those kind of things. So two simple things, Sachin, to start with: measure and experiment. These are your very low cost, very basic product management techniques.
In fact, I was actually about to come to that. Is what are the like no nonsense, absolute must things which somebody should do, and you are saying measure and mm, what did you say again?
Yeah, so one is measure, stay away from percentages, right? So that's the measure part of it. Second is the experimenting part of it.
Yes,
Get an
experiment.
opportunity for very simple experiments.
Yeah, because the same analogy which I was thinking in my mind is, let's say somebody says, I want to start a development team now. What are the absolute minimum development practices which I should embrace? Let's say if I don't have a lot of people, let's say I have only 4 developers working out of a room, I would still advise them that make sure that you have a versioning system. Do not skimp on it. It's available for free today. And second thing is get some sort of integration environment. Do not skimp on test writing. So these are the like absolute bare minimum. Maybe you don't have, let's say, continuous delivery, uh, but you don't need continuous delivery. If you are developing and it is not going to production, that's okay.
Right.
But at least you have certain level of like sanity checks everywhere. So these
I
type
want
of
to give an example here, Sachin.
Mhm.
In my startup, in early days, we had around 30 users.
Mhm.
One very seasoned exec asked me, okay, can you do a survey? And I said, yes, and suggested to me, go to Survey Monkey. They have a page there where you put your population, what kind of confidence you want, and it'll tell you how many people to survey. So you get the right sample, and then it was like, divide your audience into different demographics and make sure that they are well represented in the right. And in the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I should not tell this person that there are just 30 people. I can do a quick survey with them very quickly, right? I can just have 15 this. I can manually look at them, say, okay, to these 15, I will ask this question. To these 15, I can ask this question, right? And then that's being part of the early days, right? Not just startups, right? Even when you're an enterprise, right? There is the sometimes the less of the data you have helps you out do more things at a much lower cost. With 30 users, I could do more experimenting at a much lesser cost because I did not have to set up IP-based filtering or demographics-based filtering and try these people who are accessing my app in the morning versus people who are accessing it in the evening. So those kind of things.
Absolutely. So, Dinker, the idea behind product management is not only limited to experimentation and measurement, right? Is there is also a feedback loop with it. And what do I mean by feedback loop is that uh, every time, and the parallel again is that we call it ADR, architectural decision documents, right? Records. That why we chose certain things and how we actually carried forward. Are there any practices which people actually do to track down what experiment they ran and what was their result? And are there any things which they can do? Because I mean, I'll give you an example. What my trepidations with people toying with it. Uh,
Hmm.
I played a lot with Google Analytics in my life. the issue with Google Analytics is that in no time, in 5 minutes, you get data which is very pretty, and there is a lot of data. If it is a web page, whether it is an app, you get a lot of data quickly. Now, I can go bonkers. I can set up some sort of filter, and I may get some numbers which actually are confirming to my biases. So sometimes it is better. And I'll give an example. Yesterday, I went to a doctor for some of my training related injuries, and then the doctor was very clear. He said, you when you are doing exercise, you actually do exercise by being aware about what are the methods to actually build your fitness. Don't go carried away into just doing exercise because you feel good about it. It will actually lead to depression when you are in injury mode. It is better to not do any exercise and stay completely sedentary and actually have that heart attack at the age of 55 or 60 and die with it, rather than actually living in depression. Because I have met a lot of patients, they develop a lot of problems, but at a later age, and actually they suffer through it. And even if, let's say, they have problems, most of them have interventions possible, the quality of life degrades. I'm not arguing about that. I'm not saying that is a better life, but he was saying that at least they are not depressed. And I'm not. But I meet a lot of young people who are actually having an injury, and they say, "Oh, I'm not doing exercise. It is just hurting my morale, and I'm not being happy." So his point was that if you want to do something, do it right. Don't do it halfway.
Yeah.
Similarly, by just getting this instant gratification of tons of data with me, setting up a chart for myself to confirm my biases, is that going to hurt my experimentation more? Is it better to actually go complete blind and wish for the best, or actually do something? I mean, what is that people should, because do you even see this risk, or this is completely hypothetical in my mind?
It's no, I hear what you're saying. So here's the thing, right? Product management as a profession is a very boring profession, right? It's a profession of watching paint dry sometimes. It's a profession of waiting for the data, right? It's a profession of patience, and this is something I tell to people who get very excited and like they come running and like, hey, I want to do product management. I want to do product management. Well, like, it's very exciting, right? Product managers are the CEO of the organization, and I can make decisions left, right, random, all those kind of things. So so I remind them of this, right? And then you're very right that way, right? You cannot the data gluttony, or even then you overanalyze, right? Google Analytics gives you so many dimensions, chopping, slicing, dicing of the data, that you can spend all day looking at. I had one user, now I had two users, right?
Even if, let's say,
You can go crazy. Density, angle, this dimension, that. What was the browser? You can go crazy with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you there. If we had about 40,000 clicks data, okay, about 800 users in a week, active users, okay, and this was a substantial amount of size for the target, because our system had 4,000 active users, and weekly there used to be not 4,000 active users, 4,000 registered users, and this is student application I'm talking about, right? Is in a university, 4,000 students coming to our platform is a pretty big deal. That is like 100% conversion in that university.
Yeah.
And in that, there are 800 people who are visiting weekly, is a fantastic metric by that.
Right.
But the idea, what we wanted to go now, is to understand what these 800 active users per week are doing and figure out what is more valuable for them. So we had enough data, but now what I was wondering is that if you are,
but
and we have,
that's the question, right? Data across how much time, right? What were the things people do, and what is the cycle of those things, right?
see, this is exactly what I'm Yeah, this is exactly what I'm interested in talking to you about. Is that many times what happens is that, let's say you and I uh, have a disagreement,
Yeah.
and in that situation, let's say we both are, let's say, assume for 2 minutes that you are not a product manager,
Right.
and now you have an opinion that we should actually do a drop down, versus I am saying that you should actually give them a list.
Yeah.
And these type of trivial decisions typically are the most energy sucking conversations, because uh, in one place somebody has already coded that, and there is a drop down, and somebody says no, it should be a list, so that they scroll, and
Yeah.
you can argue till cows come home, whether one is better over the other, and it becomes a hearsay argument. So sometimes you want to say, oh, let's check it out. And typically, these arguments, you can design an experiment to support your hypothesis.
Yeah.
And uh, one very
The,
interesting.
A and prominent is the choice I like. B and like little gives me the choice that I don't like. And it's like the magicians, right? They will
Absolutely. And
they'll leave the seven behind. So when they quickly shuffle, you see the seven for the instance, and they say, "Oh, my pick is seven."
And by the way, Dinker, this goes back to your earlier point of like percentages, right? This is a very like a clear story that when people want to actually use statistics to their advantage, this happened in United States. There was a contraceptive pill which was actually having a fatality rate of 0.24%,
Hmm.
and uh, no, 0.024%.
Hmm.
And a new drug was invented which had much lesser hormonal side effects, but it had 0.075% fatality rate.
Hmm.
So technically it was less than 0.1%. And still, the company which actually was leading manufacturer, which had lesser fatality rate but more side effects, they advertised this new drug has 3x more fatality rate than ours. And factually it was correct,
Yeah,
but it
the
was a non
percentages can really mess up the story. Yeah.
correct. And my worry is that sometimes it is better that either one of you, let's say you say, I am wearing this product owner's hat, and I don't want to do list, I want to stick to drop down,
Hmm.
and let's be done with it. And this goes back to your simple point. Why design a very elaborate survey mechanism when you
Yeah.
can just like scan through it and then figure out what goes on? So I'm I'm in my mind again questioning. Maybe it is not the issue of cost. It is actually uh, what is that people need to be in mind. And I like your analogy of like sometimes it is watching paint dry. That means it is not a profession for everybody. It is not a question of skill as
It's
well.
not profession for those who like to follow stock tickers.
Exactly. And my worry is that by providing any commoditized knowledge, today it is available. I can get on Google Analytics. So let's say my friend, I have seen mixed panel. I know that I can actually do this. And how many people we have met, Dinker, who say, I follow Agile, and they don't.
Yeah.
Similarly, uh, have you ever met a ProMa who is absolutely not doing any job of ProMa, but actually just because they have all the tools around them, they are saying that we are a ProMa now?
Uh, I mean, the world is full of right, and I don't want to blame them. I mean, in the sense, the world is full of people who believe that following the tasks of a product management make me a product manager, right? Rather than focusing on the outcomes, the behaviors they focus on. If I do these things, I'm a product manager, right? That's the biggest fallacy of someone who's. But mostly, I've seen people who are starting their careers, right? Once they come into the mess, once the pressure of outcomes start coming in, people quickly realign and say that frameworks and everything is fine, these are ultimately just tool. Using them is not my aim, but using them to achieve what I'm this product is supposed to achieve is my aim. But Sachin, going back,
Probably,
yeah, go ahead.
probably every ProMa should actually set up a metric for themselves to calculate success. For example, it would be like, if I want to get a product out with certain features, and this is my MVP which I defined. I got all the features out, and now I want to see that these adoption metrics I want to track. Probably that would be a good measure of like testing their own methods.
Well, one very popular and almost scandalizing metric that a lot of, how many times have you said no to a feature, or how many times have you rejected things, right? How many times were you wrong? I often ask this in interviews to product managers. How many times was your analysis wrong? If someone says like, unless someone is like nearing towards 50-50, 30-40 times I'm wrong, someone has not done the right amount of measurement. So yes, I mean, it's a very interesting thought. Maybe this is one of the discussions we can have is after the hash life stack, hash life metrics. We should discuss that, what kind of metrics we should have for our lives. Again, our life intersecting with our profession. Maybe that's another discussion. But Sachin, I want to
Correct.
go back, trace back on the stack of the conversation digression we had is, you had asked the question, how are experiments being recorded, if they are getting recorded, and you had alluded to ADD, ADR, right? I am a big proponent of product decision log, right? Because what happens is you make a decision, and especially in startups, enterprises, things change, people move on, people forget, you yourself forget your decisions and all that. It's very good to have that kind of repository, that why did we think at that time that something was of value. And it just does not have a CYA, cover your ass kind of purpose. It does not have, oh, let me go and understand why that decision was made. But it has a very important effect on a person. Let me go back and realize how short-sighted we were, how much in love with our ideas we were, how we made assumptions, and those assumptions. So if you go back and see, you'll start realizing that at that point you did not have that kind of foresight. Now that you have that 2020 hindsight, what can you do change? So there is a lot of learning and understanding the decision making as a product manager, and understanding those criterias and taking it forward, right? The evolution, the real evolution will happen then.
So, Dinker, in terms of this is fantastic point about the product decision log. But when a product decision log is maintained, let's say that I conducted an experiment
Right.
about running a campaign, um, and let's say that we did not get uh, positive results. I would say I'm not saying that it was a failed experiment, so to speak. But let's say whatever hypothesis we ran with, we got negative confirmation for it, and you went ahead and you took the decision. Um, do typically you run the same experiment again because situation might have changed? You might have got
Yeah,
a lot more customers.
yeah. Personally, I may have visited the theme again, but never the experiment again, because an experiment is very contextual, right? And as you said, situation as well, but the theme may remain same. Maybe I'm still thematically, I'm still trying to understand, what is attracting the customer to my app. Thematically, I'm still trying to understand why people are retaining. Thematically, I may be still trying to figure out the base things as my user, but definitely not the same experiment as is. I'll be surprised if there's an experiment as is robust enough that it is still applicable across time, growth, and the change in the product that happens over,
So the learning which I'm getting from this is it is okay to run the experimentation multiple number of times, provided that you believe that um, you adopt.
outcome is more
Basically,
important than
yes.
the mechanics.
So, right, the theme is actually carried forward. For example, I can give you a case is YouTube has predominant audience as young male.
Hmm.
And let's say YouTube starts doing a lot of things to attract, let's say, female population to YouTube, which is extremely awesome on Instagram for that matter.
Right.
So, and now that their target demographic has now much better gender mix, they need to now test certain features, whether it is how to play the preview of a video or certain placement or whatever, right? Um, so their experimentation actually might be valuable to run one more time. But now,
The
going
sampling
back to
will
your
change.
theme,
Yeah, the
yes,
sampling which and all those things. The theme remains same. I want to
right.
know that at the end of the video, what do you want people want to do by default? Yeah.
And Dinker, this experimentation design, I don't think it is trivial as people think that okay, just plug in an analytics and get it running. So, do you recommend people to not treat this as a trivial thing and just like start? Oh,
It's tricky. It's
huh?
tricky. It's not trivial, but what I have seen is, certain people make it very, whoa, dude, this is not trivial. This is very serious stuff, right? I mean, both extremes don't exist, right? So the example that I gave you, right? Divide your user base into two, just pick to start experiment. So you should never hesitate to start, right? From that perspective, I think asking the questions, you may ask the wrong question, you will learn along the way. Users may respond in a certain way, right? Just the point is just start going, right? uh, the product will evolve, the questions will evolve, the experimenting will evolve, it will become more sophisticated over a period of time. But till you reach that sophistication, right? It's the same thing, Sachin, in many organizations. When someone is doing has a bright idea, they start as a skunk work. Let me first do it. Then they show it to the manager. Then it stays within that two people. They make some. Then they show it to a few more people. Then it gets but if someone had announced, oh, I'm going to do this and I'll do it the right way, I will approach this person, that person, then all that they will get are rejections and meetings and nothing will happen, right? So from similar analogy, right, till you achieve that sophistication of running the perfect survey and the perfect experiment, don't hesitate from doing experiments on the concept of experiment itself. Just start going. So from that perspective, I would tell people it's actually very trivial to start experiment. Just
But I'll now I'm going to be devil's advocate here. So
yeah.
Dinkar, one day I was this is almost a decade ago, and what I started doing is basically I wanted to learn search, and I downloaded Solar Search and installed it to my laptop, and I downloaded the Wikipedia XML dump and indexed it. The whole process took about 45 to 50 minutes on my laptop.
There was a time
And
to do that. Yeah. On an
yeah, and as soon as you do it, you can actually go to the console and start typing search term, and you will start getting results. And they are pretty fantastic search results, by the way. But what I realize is this feeling that, oh, I can integrate search into my application within 10 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours, right? Is a pretty dangerous feeling. And
yes.
come to that very quickly is
Feature
in
stuffing. It leads to feature stuffing. Just because
not
the
only
feature can be implemented, let's put it.
yes, and the second thing is later on I realized that integrating search and getting some junk results for your junk terms is super easy, but increasing the relevance of search results depending upon what user is asking is massively difficult job.
Yes.
And this requires far nuanced understanding of users, what they are looking for,
Yes.
what is the basically your action flow, what you want them to do. I mean, uh, it's not as easy as you say. Somebody types in cricket and you show them cricket as bug, cricket as sport, cricket as the mobile company in United States. This is not how it works.
Yeah.
So I always have this fear with this easy to get started with, but insanely difficult to perfect. So sometimes I wonder whether can you live with an application without search until you realize that I really need search. And today I advise pretty much any customer who says I want to implement search that it's 6 month activity.
Yeah.
You will get integrated search on first week. Next 2 weeks we are going to do lot of searches and design those searches and then like test cases around it. But then over the next 4 5 6 months we are going to continuously experiment and see whether the results are helping users or not. So something similar to that, uh, if let's say somebody wants to take this red pill and jump into the metrics and experimentation, what would you advise them that they need to know that okay, this is like going out of hand. I need to actually recalibrate myself to get something out.
Go to the first principles, right? You're experimenting something, you have some outcome in mind against which you will validate. You will not invest more than what is the level of the experiment and the risk of the experiment and the perceived benefit of the experiment. You should never, go beyond that in your investment. And ultimately, you should expect that this is an iterative thing, right? I will
Hmm.
keep on changing, I'll keep on improving, I'll keep on improving. And if your metrics are not showing that kind of change, that means you're stopping. You better stop, right? So it's very important to do these kind of experiments. Now we're kind of digressing from the term experiment. This is like experiment towards adding features into the product. But again, they're also same principles, right? So the ideas behind the principle are very simple. First of all, don't front load a lot of work. Take the most simple use case, start building on top of it, keep a control on your cost, and don't get too excited from positive result, right?
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing, right? If your search has resulted in people buying, earlier people were buying one product, but after search they're buying two products, doesn't mean that your search has introduced 100% growth, right? So be more realistic around it. So simple things, right? Manage your cost, be ready for iterative learning, and be very clear about the data that you're getting, right? The trends that you're getting. Stay away from percentages. Percentages are the biggest enemy of startups.
So let me
Early
recap,
stage
right?
products. Yeah.
Let me recap so far. If somebody wants to do product management on a budget,
Yeah.
the best thing they can actually have is a product manager who really knows what they're talking about, part of their team. That is the best thing they can have. But let's say you do not have the luxury of it, and you are waiting, and until you onboard such a person onto your team, um, you can still start with product management principles, learn about it. I think the second is the tooling is pretty much free of charge, whether it is analytics, whether it is and your project management tools will actually be useful for your experimentation logs. And you start designing your experiments. That extra cost which you spend
With very
is worth it.
simple, basic validations. Yes.
Now, and then obviously, as everything would have, there are a lot of good paths from here. You can actually improve your quality of experiments. You can actually improve your processes to collect this feedback. And some of the techniques which we haven't talked about is this, like focus groups and user research, which actually can help you do that. I think whenever people think about product management, they start with fancy stuff first. But what I was interested in going like cheap, going completely broke kind of situation. At what point do you think this focus group, because this has been always my dilemma, is focus group research, it is better to do in the beginning when you don't have anything. It is like you understanding your uh, target demographic. but that is not cheap.
Yeah.
And many times it is difficult to convince people to spend those early dollars onto that, which is very expensive funding. Uh, and they say, okay, I'll get back to that later. Um, what is your thought in short around that, in terms of like when it becomes critical to do that, even if it is expensive funding, and when it is actually okay to skip it and go by your gut feel?
See, the first principle we have to realize that it's very easy for humans to give feedback to something that they can see and
Okay.
they can toy with, right? So if you give them a concept, hey, imagine something, they will add their own masala, their own experiences there, and you'll get some, right? So first of all, you should have something for people to like or dislike. That means you need to have something. You need to, your product need to be at some stage, right?
Hmm.
That's part one. Focus groups became very, very useful and still are as a concept. Um, but today, what is happening with digital, with your basic A and B testing, right? What you have done is you have now asked a certain set of people, hey, do you like this? Do you like this? Right? So in some way, the focus group concept is still being used in the digital methodology, right? But we have used different terms. We don't call them focus group anymore. We call them, a sample representing some demographics. You do all those kind of things. So you can do that, right? Now, uh, probably the question that you're trying to ask is that when do we, when do we go from frugal to putting serious money? Because typically focus group means bunch of people are coming, you'll give
No,
them
I mean,
A
no,
or
I didn't mean that. I wanted to say that when it is worth going to focus group despite it is expensive. Let's say,
once
uh,
you have
uh,
something for them to either like or dislike.
means like I'm asking you, what are those areas where you would like to not skimp on it? It's
Yeah,
like typically you don't want to skimp on security.
right.
Similarly, are there any areas where you think it's better to go with focus group rather than actually going by your gut feel?
Oh, okay. If you take focus group versus gut feel, till you have something, you rely on your gut feel, your personal experiences, the team's experiences. Once you have something, that's the first time you go and check with users, the focus group concept. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Right? They like it, they dislike it. Then the rule of thumb for me is that if you're introducing something new, or you're introducing a change, right? Whose cost is large enough, right? For you to lose revenue, lose reputation, yeah, right? Then it is another checkpoint where you will go and check with the focus group. Are you okay with this, right? So these are mega features that are coming into your, right? The rule of thumb is um, if you are changing the look and feel of your product, where the users, however small they were, those users have been using your product, they almost develop a muscle memory of where things are. If you are going to change that, if you're going to change the alignment of the next button by 10 pixel and someone was used to clicking it here, now it is here, there is a good reason you're doing it. You just don't want to paste. But the flip side of it is what will happen to the existing users, what will happen to the new set of users. Then you do focus group and you say, oh my God, with this change, I'm going to lose all of my existing, I'm going to piss off all of my existing users. But now I'm good. But on the other hand, I'll gain these many new users, right?
Yeah.
Now you have the cost. So what is the risk that you will lose your entire user base? But why you need a user? Will you gain, right? So where you have these kind of monumental decisions, which are related to security, privacy, which are related to user interface, the experience of a user, where it is related to a whole new thing, a whole new capability people can do with your product. And these are expensive enough, not just in the cost of development, but also the negative cost of it, the opportunity cost of it. then you go and do some user research. Then you have a rule of thumb where that cost will justify this investment.
So, if I understand it correctly, what you are saying is you need to actually do the risk analysis. When the risk actually goes beyond the threshold in your mind of taking a decision, then the gut feel actually is useless. You should actually go with the real testing, design the focus group as close as possible to your target audience, and then go by that.
Create
Even if it
something, show, hey, we did this, do you like it? I'll give you an example. Skype had a look and feel, and then Microsoft bought it, and then they changed the user interface. And the only thing that I as a user felt was they just made things more spacious. Now there was more white space. I was so pissed off with Skype that day, like for 1 month, 2 months, I just could not. I hated it. Oh, there is so much. Now I have to move the mouse more than what I moved earlier, right? People were so upset. They were blasting Skype left and right, and all perceptibly, maybe they may have made a lot of changes, right? But to me, as an end user, it looked like that they had made it more spacious. And for no, I just couldn't understand why they have done that, right? So that is now, your existing user base has a muscle memory, has a way of using your product. You're changing that. That's a risk. Go do a, how much will it piss off, right? And probably they could take that risk because it was a new organization. Maybe they were focusing on business and they were thinking that consumer side of Skype will disappear, and but
right.
this Skype for business will be our big thing. And maybe they made the bold bet and maybe they won.
Absolutely.
Skype
And
for
I think
business is a big deal.
and I think their making experimentation actually is fantastic in terms of like testing the UX, because it UX actually is the thing which you said first
If
contact.
they were such, but if they were testing the UX, they would never have made the change because the UX people would have told them that this is additional work, this is more thing, it will damage the muscle memory, leave it, don't make the change, right? Uh, and that's the point. But if someone was thinking, let's say product or business, they would have thought, right, weirdly enterprise people like spacious things. It's going to mess our consumer. But you know what? I don't know how long consumer will be there, but enterprise is forever for Microsoft. So let's piss off the consumer. Let's move to Microsoft. FaceTime came, WhatsApp came, so many video call thingy came. Skype is not that popular anymore, but on enterprise side, they are winning like crazy. So maybe the product manager, I'm using that's what they were thinking. Maybe things just happened that way, but there's a little bit how the UX may differ from a product thinking. That
So you are saying that they actually did a trade-off there. They didn't.
did a trade-off. Yes, yes, they did. And you know what? When you're growing, you will have to do every change is a trade-off. You will piss off some existing user base. And you
Yeah.
have
By the way,
to do about it.
this brings very interesting use case is that today I read about Netflix is testing ad supported plans,
Yeah.
which will be cheaper or free, because their subscriber base is shrinking. And earlier, they would be saying that you pay a premium price and you don't see any ads, whether it is a movie or whether it is a TV show. But it is
They're
a
doing the
surprising.
reverse of YouTube.
They are doing the reverse of the YouTube. But I think you're right. Is the trade-off is the key thing. If there is one takeaway which I would actually do is earlier I used to always think engineers are the kings of trade-off. They are always designing systems with trade-offs in mind. Example is distributed systems are eventual consistency. They sacrifice consistency for scale. And here, what you are telling me is that in product management as well, it is sort of trade-off. You might not actually pick the best decision, which is empirically proved, but rather than you will actually choose something which satisfies to your current constraints, whether it is timing constraints, whether it is feature constraint or whatever your goals are.
Forward looking, make forward looking statements.
Absolutely. That's fantastic, Dinker. I mean, like this is very clear to me now. In terms of at least if you want to go on a budget for ProMa, it is possible, but there are a lot of pitfalls. Yet those are uh, you can deal with them
Yes.
if you are conscious about it. But it is always better to keep in mind that this is a very serious thing,
Yes.
and you need to get people who are actually serious about it, passionate about it, skilled in it, and then only you will be able to get the most benefit of it. You cannot actually hire a security expert just because they have done a Udemy course. And
Yes.
I think similarly, you should not hire a ProMa.
Well, probably we should say that, yeah, maybe there are a lot of people who are good at security and have done Udemy course.
Absolutely. No, my point is
Like,
that that could not be the only qualification you
only
have.
qualify. Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
Right. So, but yeah, fantastic, Dinker. I had that in my mind for a while now, but I'm glad that I had this discussion. But I think one takeaway point is, which you mentioned, is we have parked for now, is there are certain aspects of experimentation we should talk later, um, and we should also talk about some real world use case about how we would we do it if we want to go back. And the reason why I'm asking this is there was this somebody was actually as an investor asking question that many times gut feel is not a bad thing. It is absolutely great thing. And the example they gave, let's say somebody was in cryogenic sleep in 2007 and they woke up in 2015, and you tell them that, hey, I have this brilliant idea. I'm going to make a game where people are actually going to swipe a pig and actually hit into the bricks. Would you
Bird.
pay for
Swipe
it?
a bird.
Yeah,
Swipe a
swipe a,
bird. Angry bird.
yeah,
Not a pig.
and Angry Bird. But yeah, they were not saying Angry Bird, they were describing it. What do you think? They might say you are crazy. But once they say this just happened while you were asleep and they sold this company for $1.2 billion, it would be so hard to believe.
Yeah.
So I think gut feel might be a good thing.
Yeah, I think, as a product manager, sometimes try we end up downplaying importance of gut. I mean, gut is nothing but your all your learnings are, in your career and in your life, and what you have noticed. Like it's like the sum total of it, and then the crystallization of that knowledge and experience. And
Absolutely.
there's nothing but the only thing is that you should be always cross-checking,
Yeah,
right? As long as you have metrics that give you that trend idea, and you can experiment. Gut, let me try something else, the opposite of my gut. You're going to win.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
That coming from a founder who was not able to succeed. So.
I mean, yeah. And I was never a founder in the product sense. I was always like the execution arm. And I now, after spending so much time, I realized that execution, or rather than technical building of a product, is the easiest job in the journey of a company. So, um, yeah, I'm so happy that I I could taste the success. My team was great, but now I realize that it's a very difficult job to actually make something successful.
And probably one of the future topics is life metrics,
Yeah,
tag life metrics. So let's
absolutely. We should talk
have a
about it.
discussion on that at some point.
All right. Thank you so much, Dinker.
Take care. Sure. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.